Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam. Canto 10, Chapter 85, entitled Lord Krishna Instructs Vasudeva. Text. "46. Shadi Asman Ishitavyam Isha Nishpapan Kuru Na Prabho Puman Yat Shraddhayam Atishtan Chodnaya Vimuchyate. Shadhi Asman Ishitavyesha. Shadhi Asman Ishitavyesha. Nishpapan Kuruna Prabhu. Nishpapan Kuruna Prabhu. Puman Chadhyayati Chadyayatishtam Puman Yachradayatishman Chodnaya Vimuchyate. Chodanaya Vimuchyate. Shadhi Asman Ishitavyesha. Nishpapan Kuruna Prabhu. Puman Yachradayatishtam Chodanaya Vimuchyate. Shadi Asman Ishitavyesha. Nishpapan Kuruna Prabhu. Puman Yachradayatishtam Chodanaya Vimuchyate. Chodanaya Vimuchyate. Chadayatishtam Chodanaya Vimuchyate. Shadiyasman Shitavyesha Nishpapa Kuruna Prabhu Pumyam Yatschadhyayatishtam Chodanaya Vimuchyate. Mataji. Shadyasman Nishitavyesha Nishpapam Kuruna Prabhu Pumam Yatschadhyayatishtam Chodanaya Vimuchyate. Yesha Nishpapam Kuruna Prabhu Puman Yatschadhyayatishtam Chodanaya Vimuchyate. Shadhi. Please order. Asman. Us. Ishitasvyam. Of those who are subject to being controlled. Isha. O controller. Nishpapan. Sinless. Kuru. Please make. Na. Us. Prabhu. O Master. Puman. A person. Yat. Which. Shraddhaya. With faith. Atishtan. Executing. Chodanaya. Of scriptural regulation. Vimuchyate. Becomes free. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. O Lord of all subordinate creatures, please tell us what to do and thus free us of all sin. One who faithfully executes your command, O Master, is no longer obliged to follow the ordinary Vedic rites. Purport. The Acharyas explain Bali's thoughts as follows, reflecting on the possibility that his request for immediate deliverance may have been too bold. Bali Maharaj considers that first he will need to become sufficiently purified. In any case, he thinks Lord Krishna and Lord Balaram must have come to him for some specific purpose. If he can receive the Lord's order and carry it out, that will be his best opportunity for purification. Indeed, as Bali states, a devotee acting under the personality of Godhead's instruction need no longer follow the sacrificial injunctions and prohibitions of the Vedas. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gyanajnana Shalaka Chakshurmantam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manovistan Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swam Rupa Kadahamayam Dadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Tapakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Sham Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Shri Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamsha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagat Pate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangira Devi Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanusute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Vacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Shadyasman Ishitavyesha Nishpapan Kuruna Prabhu Puman Yachchada Yatishmam Chodanaya Vimuchyate. O Lord of all subordinate creatures, please tell us what to do and thus free us of all sin. One who faithfully executes your command, O Master, is no longer obliged to follow the ordinary Vedic rites. Bali Maharaj here exemplifies the appropriate mood of a devotee. He is already liberated. What more can anyone ask for or hope for when he has direct association of Krishna? That's like Kunti Maharani, and said when Krishna was there in her prayers, then she was always remembering Krishna. But now when Krishna has been gone, and it's not the same thing anymore. But still, that is the mood, hankering after Krishna and considering oneself not qualified to be in association of Krishna. Just like here, Bali Maharaj, he considers that Krishna and Balaram had come, and this is important for my purification. Devotee never considers oneself to be advanced. He always thinks that there are so many things that I can improve, that I can rectify, that I can work upon, that I can surrender more. He never considers himself to be perfected. But as we see here in Bali Maharaj's case, he already had the lotus feet of Krishna on his head. He already surrendered everything to him. He is the example of absolutely surrendering everything to the Lord. Just like Dhruva Maharaj, he was touched by the conch shell. He was immediately enlightened. But Bali Maharaj, he was directly, Krishna placed his foot on his head. So he's already liberated. Another thing, of course, Bali Maharaj, who is standing at the door of his Sutala. Yeah, it's a form, it's Gadadhar. He is standing in front of the door, guarding his Sutala planets. So he's constantly having darshan of the Lord, and still he thinks, I have to become purified. He said, please tell us what to do, and thus free us from all sin. So that's appropriate mood to consider that maybe there is some deficiency in us, and definitely there is. So we have to become more purified. Just like sometimes, we definitely, not sometimes, but we always have to be very cautious, because by different type of association we may become affected. Because even Prahlad Maharaj, this is one of his prayers. There are some stories in Puranas where he sometimes fights against the Lord also. And then how is that? And then he says that this is because of association with the demons. So Bali Maharaj is also, he's surrounded by demons, demoniac mentality. But again, still that most appropriate mood, the attitude that definitely the Lord is so kind, so He must be here as something for my purification, as something to free us, to free me from my sins, sinful reactions, sinful activities. So that mood is the most appropriate mood, and because he has that mood, then definitely, of course, Krishna is always present. He has that submissive, humble, subservient mood, so Krishna is always present. So here in this chapter we are hearing how Krishna and Balaram had come to retrieve the sons of Devaki, and that will be described also later on. And Bali Maharaj is offering prayers, is glorifying Krishna. So here he is stating that one who faithfully executes your command, O Master, is no longer obliged to follow the ordinary Vedic rites. So this is very important. This is very high stage of spiritual realization. And this is why, again, we said this is someone who has that kind of attitude, that appropriate mood of servitorship towards Krishna. One doesn't have to follow Vedic rules and regulations. One who is faithfully executing your command. So we have in the Shastra so many different levels of instructions, right? We know the most of it, more than 90%, it's Karma Kanda, a little bit Jnana Kanda, Bhakti almost very little. So in that Bhakti, that is where Krishna directly instructs, either in Srimad Bhagavatam, Uddhava, or somebody else, or in Bhagavad-gita, Arjuna. So this is something that has the priority over everything else. And most often this is confusing. This is very difficult to understand what should be the proper course of action, how should one act, because it is there in the Shastra. And of course, if we don't accept the Shastra, then it's just like Buddhism, then it's Gnostic. So that's the whole point of Shankaracharya coming and establishing the Shastra. But then how to follow the Shastra? This is only very clear to those who are devoted to Krishna. So he said, one doesn't have to follow because one will be confused, just like Arjuna was confused, no? Arjuna was confused. He gave arguments from Artha Shastra, he gave arguments from Dharma Shastra, and still he couldn't resolve his predicament. He couldn't resolve his confusion, bewilderment. And then Krishna was just waiting, okay. Just like Krishna is waiting, Dvasuparna, when that bird will turn towards me, surrender, ask, inquire. So then Arjuna was left without anything, any argument, any further argument. And then he finally broke down and Karpanya Doshopata Svabhava, surrendered to Krishna. Okay, now I'm surrendering. There's nothing left. I'm bewildered. I don't know how to act because this situation is so bewildering. So then Krishna started instructing. Only in that state when one surrenders, it is possible to receive the higher instruction. Otherwise when one keeps on arguing, again from the Shastra, which may sound very logical and practical, but still one cannot apply those instructions and one doesn't know how to resolve the difficulties that one is facing, then one has to take to the higher authority. And what is the higher or highest authority? It's Krishna himself directly. And that's why Krishna pointed out, Traigunya Vishaya Veda, Nishtraigunya Bhavarjuna, Nirdvandva Nitya Sattvasto, Niryoga Kshema Atman. Just reject these flowery words of the Vedas. And just follow my instructions. Sarva dharmam parityajam amekam sharanam raja. Just reject all these dharmas, all these lower instructions. Just follow my instructions. So how to discern what is the higher instruction, how to discern what is the highest instruction. So that's something that requires mercy, that's something that requires purification, just like here we said, Bali Maharaj asking for purification. So when one is surrender and one follows the absolute authority, then it's not difficult to achieve absolute purification and absolute association of Krishna. Direct association of Krishna. So one has to surrender. But again, it might be challenging how to follow instructions. Giraj Maharaj tells the story. There was one devotee, Srila Prabhupada instructed him in one particular way, and then after some time he gave him another kind of instruction. And then this devotee was bewildered that now what to do. And then he came to Srila Prabhupada and he said, Srila Prabhupada, you gave me this instruction, and now you're giving me this other instruction. What should be done? What should I do? So then Srila Prabhupada said, you follow the latest instruction. You follow the latest instruction. Just like we know, Srimad Bhagavatam is the latest conclusion of all the Shastras, no? So Srila Prabhupada said, you follow the latest instruction. But then still the devotee was confused, he tried to argue, but Srila Prabhupada, you told me that time this, and this. So then Srila Prabhupada replied, just as you accepted my authority that time, why are you not accepting my authority now? No? So Srila Prabhupada pointed out, there is latest instruction, there is always something that it's concluding. And all the previous instructions are meant, again, to attain certain level, to achieve something in particular. No? So definitely it's not easy to ascertain the real course of action. This is why we need Guru, this is why we need Acharyas. And that's why Acharyas according to Kala Desha Patra, they adjust the instructions or rules. They adjust. Of course, many times they also how would you say, they point out again to the same rules and principles, no? They revert again to the same rules and principles. So it depends. One has to be expert. Of course, that only acharyas can do, that nobody else can do. Nobody else can say that this should be followed or this shouldn't be followed. Only somebody who is sufficiently qualified and purified can understand what is Krishna's will and what is the ultimate goal of Krishna's instructions and how to follow. Because one should not imitate. Just like we know in the story of Lord Shiva and Parvati sitting on his lap, which was considered transgression of social customs. And then Chitraketu was joking, but apparently kind of criticizing that position. And then Srila Prabhupada in the purport explains that there is a principle, Tajya se na doshayam, that somebody who is very powerful, he cannot be faultless. He is faultless. He cannot commit any kind of fault. He should not be blamed. So that question comes when Parikshit Maharaj is asking Shukadev Goswami in the 10th canto that how come Krishna is dancing with the wives of others. So can he explain these apparent contradictions in the principles of morality, or not following the moral principles, apparent moral principles? So how is this? So then Shukadev Goswami explains that this is the position. Just like the sun, which can evaporate the contaminating urine and not become affected, or just like the fire can burn so many different things and not become affected or contaminated. So in the same way, somebody who is powerful, he can purify everything and he will not be affected. And he can also sometimes in such a way not be affected by certain kind of instructions or the activities that he performs. So one should not find fault within it. Just like here also, just after several verses, it will be explained why those sons of Devaki had been cursed to be killed and to appear in different, to be killed by their father also and then appear in different times. Why that happened? Because they were criticizing Lord Brahma. So that will be discussed. So one should not find the fault, and of course one should not imitate. That is then even more dangerous. That is like to imitate the Acharya and trying to adjust certain principles or amend some rules or whatever. Very, very dangerous. This is pointed out, Srila Prabhupada pointed out in that story of Chitraketu. It's like Lord Shiva drank the ocean, the poison from the ocean. Can we do that? No. So if one is not powerful, one will not be able to digest it. And one will remain then sinful, degraded. No. So one should be very, very, very cautious. So sometimes Srila Prabhupada did some things to adjust certain principles, or certain details, better to say, so that the higher principle can be established. That is there. Tamal Krishna Maharaj said sometimes Srila Prabhupada, like some small things, which wouldn't affect Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada wouldn't take bath sometimes after, before sitting on Vyasa-san. So it's just some certain incidents. Or when they were traveling, devotees in the train, and they were sharing prasadam, then Srila Prabhupada told to one devotee who just stood up to wash his hand, he said, don't worry about it, this is prasadam, you just take prasadam, everything is fine. Some small things, small little such kind of incidents. So it doesn't affect Srila Prabhupada because the mood is more important. The mood is more important. Of course, we should not imitate, that's another thing, that's another point we have to stress, because just like in Jagannath Puri, Ramanuja came and he said all these Shabaras, how they're worshipping Jagannath, and he wanted to establish so many different rules and regulations, and he brought so many Brahmanas from South India. They replaced all of those Shabaras and they started writing Chandan and offering everything according to Pancharatric principles and everything. But Jagannath didn't like it. He was getting Chandan, but he didn't like the mood so much. And that's how Ramanujacharya woke up next morning somewhere else. Jagannath just sent him somewhere else. He liked it the way it was done before. He liked that mood. So this is more important than any rules and regulations. How to judge. We judge by the mood, by the principle that again Krishna establishes above all the other rules and regulations. Same thing like with Pundarik Vidyanidhi. He was criticizing pujaris when they're, Odana Shastri, or I think when they give a new cloth to Jagannath, but it was filled with starch and it wasn't washed, so then he chastised that pujari, but then Jagannath came and chastised him and he slapped him. Keep on slapping and then... and so Jagannath likes it in a particular way. So it's just, it's very unique. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also, he would, because of devotion of his devotees, he would sometimes be forced to break certain rules. He was obliged to break certain rules. So like this, certain principles and regulations, we have to understand what they're meant for. Essentially it is understood, and any rules are there to create a habit. That's one of the things, to create a habit, so that one keeps on following them. But then one has to learn how to adjust. That's like once Dhanavir Maharaj, he gave one example. He said, it's like you come to the traffic light, and the traffic light doesn't work for whatever reason. Maybe not the electricity or some whatever. It doesn't work. And the red light, it's always there. It's like, somehow or other, it seems like red light is there. It's not changing into green or whatever. And now that there is a traffic policeman and he tells you, you can cross the road. And then you start arguing, no, I cannot cross the road because it's a red light. And then he said, I'm the authority here, I'm appointed representative, so I'm telling you, you cross the road. And then you start arguing, no, I'm not going to cross the road because it's a red light. So how much sense does that have? How much sense does that have? So in the same way, Acharyas or Krishna, they know what to do when. Again we said, Kala Desha Patra. What is to be done? For the higher cause. What is the higher cause? To be Krishna conscious. It's not that, we just follow rules and regulations for sake of following rules and regulations. And this is what can be very confusing when we try to understand the Purusharthas of life, Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha, to discern what is spiritual, discern what is material. So then mostly people say, Dharma, okay, that is religious, Moksha, that is spiritual, Artha and Kama, that sounds material. No? Because Moksha, that means deliverance. That means just like in Vaikuntha, no distress. So when one achieves moksha, one goes to Vaikuntha, then no more distress. But that's material. That's material conception. That's not the real reason to go to Vaikuntha. Of course, with such conception, one cannot come to Vaikuntha. But there might be such conception. Or it's just, okay, Brahmajyoti, impersonal liberation, no more distress, that's what mukti is. But this is a misconception. It is not that mukti is meant for that. What is the difference? Of course, when we put bhakti as the final fifth purushartha, then everything becomes clear. What does that mean? That means that everything should be in connection to Krishna. So all of those, dharma, artha, kama, moksha, should be in connection to Krishna. No? If they're not connected to Krishna in knowledge, then it's all ignorance. Then definitely there will be so much confusion. How to understand the scriptural injunctions. How to understand, again, what is to be done, what is not to be done. So here, Bali Maharaj points out that if one just executes Krishna's order, which is the most important order that we can receive in the scriptures, then one doesn't have to worry about so many other things. Because how often do we worry? Many times we hear from people, they have on the altar so many devatas, this and that. No, everybody, devatas and movie stars and who knows, politicians, this, that, so many things. Once I was in Tamil Nadu, I remember we were distributing books. and I came to one house, and the man had JF Kennedy on the altar. I was like, what is this doing here? You know, it's like, it's funny. As like Prabhupada would say, people worship Hitler during the Second World War, you know, because they were getting some profit, somehow, for some reason. So they worship anything. And then, of course, anyway, when people worship devatas, or just like recently, one boy, his mother was told, because they didn't worship their Kula Devata for many, many years. So then Pujari, finally, after they came now a few months back, then Pujari told them, now you have for 12 months, every month, once you have to come. You have to worship, to atone for that offense of not worshipping for so many years. So then people are afraid, now I have to worship Devata. But that's not what Krishna is saying. We don't have to worship demigods. We don't have to worship anyone. But everybody is so much afraid. How can I just take to worship Krishna? You know? Then all the other demigods will be offended. That's such a great misconception. Everything else, how many small dharmas, so many different dharmas are there that prevent us from surrendering to Krishna. So that's a big obstacle then. And that's why Krishna at those points, he said, he establishes the highest principle. He establishes the highest principle. Again, sarva dharma parityaja, just surrender unto me. Oh. What's that verse in 11th canto? Very important. Devarshi bhutaptan rinam pritrinam nakinkaroyam nakinkaronayam rini charajam sarvatmana ya sharanam sharanyam gato mukundam parihitya karnam. So that's what Krishna is. That's what Krishna is stating, that if one surrenders unto me, if one is surrendering unto Krishna, he doesn't have to worry about pitris, he doesn't have to worry about sages, he doesn't have to worry about demigods, he has no obligation, he has no debt to repay to anybody, society, anybody. One doesn't have to do that. But it's so difficult to accept that. That is such a struggle. That is such a struggle here. So what is Bali Maharaj doing here? He's saying, one who faithfully executes your command, O Master, it's no longer obliged to follow the ordinary Vedic rites. One just doesn't have to do that. No? One just doesn't have to follow so many different instructions that are there. How is it possible to follow anyway? Yeah? How is it possible to follow? Main principle should be pleasure of Krishna. That's what bhakti is all about. And even if it's inappropriate, just like we gave few examples, and there are so many more, like in Vrindavan we hear that one lady was brushing teeth, and then using as a spoon for cooking khichdi, giving to Krishna, and Madan Mohan, Lila, and Sanatan Goswami. It's not important. It's not important. What is important? Krishna wants that bhav. Krishna wants that love. That's what he wants. Other details are not so important. So for us, this is such a struggle to accept. So difficult. So well, then yes, then just like Bali Maharaj says here, if that's also not the case, and even if it is, we accept, still we need some purification. That means we need some purification. We are also still attached to, rules and regulations, just like niyamagraha and niyamagraha. So we don't have a proper understanding. And we still have to become engaged in devotional service under proper guidance to get that understanding. We can just finally surrender and leave everything, without any worries that somebody else will be affected or not affected. Everything then becomes all auspicious, because who gave the Vedas in the first place anyway? Who presented all those laws? Krishna himself. So why he presented all these rules and principles? It's for benefit of the living beings. So then if he gave it, then he knows what is the best. He knows what is the best for us. So then we don't have to struggle ourselves to try to understand what is to be followed, what is not to be followed. We just follow what Krishna says. It's so easy, but it's not easy. Yeah, that's where we struggle. It's not easy. It's not easy to surrender. We are attached to rules and regulations. We are attached to rules and regulations. Of course, those who follow rules and regulations, then I said, yes, that's like the main purpose of performing devotional service, and that mood leads to Vaikuntha. That's not Golok Vrindavan, because Krishna doesn't follow rules and regulations. Even Lord Ramachandra, he follows. He's so strict in rules and regulations. He would rather abandon Sita or something, whatever else, but he'll follow rules and regulations. Krishna wouldn't do that. Krishna wouldn't do that. That's difference. That is difference, of course. But even Lord Ramachandra's pastimes are on much higher level. They're still in relationship to him. Whereas we still struggle with those lower principles that are given, how to practice some kind of spiritual life. That's on the way, on the much, much lower level. So here in the purport, it is explained that Acharyas point out that Bali Maharaj was considering, yes, that he has to become purified, and that Lord Krishna and Lord Balaram must have come for some specific purpose. So that if he carries out that order, that will be his best purification. So that's another, again, he's awaiting the order. He's awaiting, how can I become purified, and how can I please Krishna? So a devotee acting under the personality of Godhead's instruction need no longer follow the sacrificial injunctions and prohibitions of Vedas. So that is the conclusion. So we don't have to worry about everything. If we would have been worrying about everything, then how would we be able to serve Krishna? But another point is also, if we, just like it is said, that somebody who chants the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, he had already fulfilled all the requirements, spiritual, religious requirements. He had already gone to all holy places. He had already performed all the yagyas. He had already done and given all the different danas and everything else. So it's not required that one becomes involved in all of these different things. And even if that's not the case, just like Srimad Bhagavad-gita states, Vedeshu yagyeshu tapasu chaiva daneshu yat punyam phalam pratishtam anyeti tat sarvam idam viditva yogi param sthanam upaiti chadyam. Just by performing devotional service, everything else is automatically included. One doesn't have to worry about doing this, one doesn't have to worry about doing that. Everything is already included, and additionally, Krishna states that one after this life comes back to me. So there's nothing more required than bhakti. So, but why we don't have faith that bhakti has that potency? That's our conditioning. That's our contamination. That we are carrying from being so attached to all these ritualistic activities. Considering rituals to be more important than the essence of it. That's like we say that spirituality. There is ritual but without spirit. And what is the use of that? So this is why here it's very interesting that Bali Maharaj makes this very, very elevated statement, and means pointing out to his elevated position of Mahajan, somebody who guides everyone, somebody who knows the essence, somebody who knows how to instruct others so that they may be benefited to advance in the spiritual life, and that one doesn't have to be entangled in any other instruction that is given there in the scriptures. So we'll stop here. Any questions or comments?
Hare. Srila Prabhupada writes in 7th Canto Bhagavatam that Sri Prahlad Maharaj is a devotee of Krishna. There is one verse, Gunairalam Asankhyair Mahatvam Tasya Suchate Vasudeve Bhagavati Yasya Naisargiki Rati. In that purport, Prabhupada writes, he is worshipping Krishna. In the same way, Bali Maharaj, did he know that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead? Even though Lord Vamandev appeared before him, just like Lord Nishingadev appeared before Prahlad Maharaj. But Prabhupada says he is originally devotee of Krishna. So did he understand, Bali Maharaj, that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead? He is a devotee of Krishna first, later on he had darshan of Vamandev. What is the tattva?
Well, according what is mentioned here in the purports, he was aware that Krishna is the Supreme
He is aware.
Personality. He was aware, yes. Because here also in the previous verse it said, in response to Bali's prayers, Sri Krishna invited him to choose some benediction. So he was already praying in such a mood, addressing him as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And here also, just like today we read. And then of course this is such a high statement, like I said, one doesn't have to follow any other instructions if one just follows your orders directly. That points out to the Krishna's absolute position.
Once Srila Prabhupada was in Surat, all the devotees, many life members, Gujaratis, they were inviting Srila Prabhupada for lunch, dinner, breakfast and all that. Prabhupada would say, yes, I'll come. Hamsaduta was very terrified. Prabhupada, you are you are saying yes to everybody, but your schedule is packed. How can you go to so many people for lunch? Then Srila Prabhupada said, it is my duty is to say yes to everybody. It is your duty to say no. So different Prabhupada's instructions are like that.
Okay, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Gaur Premanande.